I literally woke up in October of 2017 with this out of the blue, unexpected longing to go to North Battleford and fast and pray. I knew it was in Canada, but I didn't even know where. So I delayed. I didn't really want to do it. I had this longing from the Lord, but not a longing in my flesh to go to the frozen tundra of the prairies of Canada in the middle of winter. So I finally, in January, just found 3 weeks. I just wanted to go and fast and pray. And I originally went, honestly, Art, with just the intention of fasting and praying for revival in my own life and for God to bring a spirit of revival like the latter rain again and just cause it to break out. On my way, on the flight. Now, I delayed for 3 months, randomly picked 3 weeks in January. There was no strategic thought in my mind. But I finally get all those pieces together, and on the flight from Kansas City to Saskatoon, where I was going to drive to North Battleford, I'm on layover in Minneapolis. I get a call from a man I've only met twice before, and he says, "Dean, I hear you're on your way," and he tells me a dream that he had just that night. We had not coordinated or anything, and he said, "I saw Canada hanging in the scales." It's actually the meme you've put out for 50 days, the 50-day mark for the battle for Canada in Edmonton. And it's the scales. And it's the scales of Canada with a darkness so profound that if it is not arrested and change course, it could slip into 3 to 4 generations of darkness. But on the other side was miracles and gold coins, I believe symbolizing literal wealth for Canada, but also the glory of God like never before. Canada's a revival nation. It has a revival destiny. So I'm going to pray for revival, and I realize I'm not just praying for revival. Canada hangs in the balance. And it shifted my 21 days, and I began laboring in prayer with a handful of others for the nation of Canada to awaken, the nation of Canada to come out of its slumber, the nation of Canada to begin to lay hold of its purpose and destiny. For 21 days, we labored, and I didn't know that anything was going to come out of that. But then there was a series of kind of, real challenges, setbacks, some very hard things that ultimately were like a refiner's fire that purified this sound of desperation for the people of Canada to cry out to God like never before, to say, not on our in the spirit, it says we are responsible. We are not a thermometer gauging the temperature in Canada. We are the thermostat that sets the temperature. We are the ones responsible in the spirit for governance and influence. And so I'm just believing now something has happened. We went to Battleford to labor and pray and had 10 amazing days of just raw prostration before God, saying, God, if you don't shift the scales, they won't shift. If you don't awaken the nation, we will slide into darkness. And I say we because I've fallen in love with Canada. Canada is now my second family. It's now my second home. And America and Canada's destinies are intertwined. This isn't just one nation or another nation. It's the ecclesia of God in North America saying we have unique purposes but a common spirit. And so what came out of North Battleford for me, and you and I have talked about this, Art, is the battle for Canada is actually a war for Canada's soul. It's a war for the ancient root of righteousness. It's a war for the prophetic history and destiny. And in that war, what we realized is North Battleford is only the first battleground. It's the first staging ground. It was a breakthrough point, a flash point to alert the intercessors and the pastors and the leaders. But the battle is hardly over. And so in the war for the soul of Canada, we are moving to the next battleground. And we couldn't do it. We wouldn't have had the equity and the spirit if 1,500 people hadn't gathered together from across the nation to pay the price at North Battleford and to deal with the sins of the land there. But now there's a prophetic series of marching orders. I believe Edmonton is clearly the bullseye, but there are maybe 2 or 3 others that I think the Lord is going to give, is stirring on your heart. And so I'm in this. We're in this together. So many leaders are in this, but we've got to capture the attention of the nation, I believe, like never before, because we're so limited, Art. We're so limited in these days. Our attention span is small. We microwave our food. We slip into passivity so easily because our schedules are so full. And there's so many things pressing on us that just says you can only be fervent for a short period of time. You can't really afford to burn. You'll burn out. And so we normalize so fast. No, this is a series of intensity. This is a sequence. If we raised if the Canadian Royal Mounties or the National Guard or the Army enlisted people in 2-week increments, you would be overrun in days, because your enemies do not have a short-term mentality. Your enemies in the natural are looking for any opportunity. You have to have a standing army that's ready to be deployed at a moment's notice to locations as appointed by the generals, locations as appointed by the prime minister. And if you don't have a standing army ready to be deployed to key battlefields, you aren't ready to defend the nation. You can't say you're standing on guard. And so there is an anointing on that national anthem right now. It's the national hymn of Canada. Every church should be singing weekly, if not at least once a month. Every nation, every church. I don't care if you're charismatic, evangelical, Pentecostal, Catholic. It's not a patriotism statement, although I think that's good. It is an intercessory prophetic statement. We are standing on guard, and our nation is going to shift. Canada shall be saved. And this is just a call to the standing army of the church, the standing army of the ecclesia, to say, okay, you fought one good fight. Are you done? Or has the war been won? Or are we moving battle by battle to complete victory?
Wow. Well, Canada, did you catch that? So Dean, who helped Lou kick up the call and do a Susan Street co-wrote Jesus Fast, is now called by God to contend for Canada with us. And yeah, I seen someone comment on the Facebook like that was your vision. Yeah, I seen for the last 3 years. I want to be clear about something, Canada. I seen greater darkness coming over this nation. My word to the Canadian Prophetic Council a year and a half ago: if we do not put our differences aside, stop cursing one another's nets, if we don't deal with the blood in the land, the issues of the first peoples, the blood in the land and theft of all the land, and the lukewarmness, if we don't come together once, twice, thrice, like I saw a series of national gatherings before Canada's 153rd birthday, which is in less than a year and a half. It's in like 15 months, 16 months. Canada in the year 2020 is 153. 153 is the number of fish in the net when Jesus said, throw your net on the other side of the boat. We are a prophetic nation. And the 153 is the number of harvest. And the Lord said, if you do not deal with your divisions and the blood in the land, you're going to miss the harvest. And I saw great darkness. I saw a lid coming down over the blessings of God, over the nation, a tap being turned off. And I know that we went to Battleford 10 days. It was a miracle to have over 1,000 people for 10 days in the frozen tundra, from where 70 years ago, God poured out a revival that shifted the world. And I asked God, is it here? At the end of the 10 days, Dean, I said, is it here? How much of this is, where is this now? God showed me only up to our ankles. did we gain a victory. Only up to our ankles of the water in the Spirit that he poured out. But we're supposed to go to our knees. It's a mighty river that God wants to bring. And we can't settle for ankle deep water. Edmonton is not a conference. We didn't win a one battle to now just have conferences. Edmonton is not a conference. And if you think that Canada is great, or you don't believe in blood in the land, or you just want to come to a conference, this is not for you. But actually, this is for you, because we need you to realize how dark this nation is, and that only God can turn the government around. It's not about getting Justin Trudeau out or any government in. It's about God coming down and restoring the foundations of this nation, which were built on God. And we need revival, reformation. And Edmonton won't be it. That's what Dean's saying here. That's what you're saying, Dean. This is not just, we're in a series of battles until the war is won, until heaven comes down, until Canada is saved.
This is a war for the soul of Canada. This is a battle. It's not about Trudeau. It's not about the government. It's not about anything like that, but it is about the ideologies that bind the feet of the nation, that promote corruption, that have a voice and to vomit darkness into the land and steal an entire generation of children, murder them in the womb, demonize them with marijuana, and so there are issues in that. The oil in Alberta should be a blessing. Oil is a blessing to the nation. It's a symbol of the potential for unity and the potential for wealth. And therefore, anytime you have that, you are touching spiritual powers, because wealth is always a competition point for spiritual powers to own. And if you don't think God cares about wealth, look at how many verses are attributed to weights and measures and justice and equity and scales and money transactions. God cares deeply about whether or not Canada is prospering from the wealth it gave it. God cares deeply about the unborn. God cares deeply about marriages. These all have implications at the highest level of control, but it's not a political battle. It's a battle in the spirit to gain ascendancy, so that those things that are alluring people to darkness lose their authority, and we begin to shift the nation with real revival and reformation. So the spirit of burning, to me, what is the battle for Canada? To me, it's a war on passivity in the church above all. It's a war on passivity in the church, and a war on and a confrontation with the ideologies and the powers that would seek to trap the nation in darkness. I would say to Edmonton, you were once a nation of revival. I mean, a city of revival. Canada has a legacy of revival. North Battleford was one of the biggest revivals in history in its global impact. Toronto was one of the biggest revivals in history. But the miracles that came out of Edmonton, see, that dream showed empty wheelchairs. It showed the glory of God and gold coins. I wonder if we're just now getting to that dream. That dream was starting us in North Battleford, but I believe the dream's content of empty wheelchairs and gold coins in the wealth of the pipeline and the power of miracles, divine, creative, astonishing miracles, and the glory of God, I think is pointing straight to Edmonton. The legacy of Charles Price, we're going to be in the arena where Charles Price was. Seats about 3,000, maybe plus people, but we're going to pack that place. Charles Price used to pack that same place with 12,000 people.
Yeah.
And they would take off from work, go unsaved, carry their sack lunch from work. They heard about the miracles, go unsaved, and leave home born again, singing hymns. And Edmonton is a city of miracles. Edmonton is a city of revival. Edmonton, Leduc, is a city of wealth. Calgary, the Olympics, the nations have been drawn to. Alberta You've called it the stepchild of Canada. We want to break that orphan spirit, but we need the pastors of Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, Leduc, across north to south. They got to own this. We got to say there's a war on passivity where we're inviting the pastors of Edmonton to say, I want the Spirit of God in my church like never before. I can't just go to another Sunday, preach another sermon, and not see the kingdom break out. I can't just have another year of the same old that I've had for the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. We've got to see God move. I believe Edmonton is right where God wants to move. And we know because an Israeli rabbi, tell the story, Art. The Israeli rabbi said, who is Edmonton? Revival's coming, and Edmonton is key.
For those who don't know, when the Lord spoke to me about the initiatives, and Stacey Campbell and different prophets said, do it. Faitine said, do it. Do national gatherings. I'm like, how do I do that? And when I said to John, you do this first one. You do this. And John ended up, he ended up leaving, the spiritual pressure and choices. He left everything. And 3 months after his dream, it got handed back to me. So I'm freaking out. I was freaking out knowing that, oh my gosh, I've got to do a national gathering in the nation. I don't even know how to do this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go gather intercessors in Edmonton because my favorite intercessor, Wendy Lee, and different ones were there. I land, and then God starts. I'm freaking out about North Battleford and about doing a national gathering, but but God's like not even worried about it. He goes, and by the way, the next gathering, the next battle will be in Edmonton. I'm like, help me here, Lord. I'm freaking out about North Battleford, but yet you want me to go to Edmonton. So and when I go and meet with intercessors, some pastors show up. I start talking to them about the need for the healing of the land and about First Nations and about the passivity which you've spoken about, Dean, needs to be broken off. But I said, but even though we don't even know what North Battleford's going to look like, we have to get to Edmonton next. It's going to be the next one. And I said, Edmonton, you are called. All of a sudden I started to prophesy, Dean, about Edmonton. I said, you are poised to be a revival hub for Western Canada. You're close. You are. It's going to break out here. It's soon. And Pastor Edith stood up from Joseph's storehouse. She was weeping. She just got back from Israel. And she goes, you're talking about Edmonton. She stands up. She goes, a rabbi. She was just in Israel that weekend. She just had landed. She goes, a rabbi found out she's from Canada, comes up to her. She goes, you're from Canada? I had a dream last night. She goes, in my dream, God came to me and said, this man is going to carry revival for Canada. His name is Edmonton. He goes, that's the name I heard, Edmonton. She goes, well, I'm from Edmonton. He goes, that's it. Edmonton is going to carry revival. He didn't know it was a city. Another man in this meeting, when I'm trying to get prayer for North Battleford, so I don't get my lunch eaten, because I don't know what I'm doing. I've never led a national gathering before. He stands up. He goes, Randy Clark, the one who sparked the 94 revival in Toronto, had just that weekend prophesied that Alberta was one of 3 places in the world that's going to experience revival soon. So, and here we find out that 365 days before the oil fell in North Battleford 70 years ago, check this out, 365 days earlier, the oil in the natural broke open in Edmonton, in Leduc. After 133 dry holes, on the 134th time they struck oil, and 365 days later the oil would fall in the spirit realm in North Battleford. North Battleford, for the most part though, they rejected it. And so where did it go? It went to Edmonton next.
Listening to the Edmonton story, it's so powerful. And we all have an Elijah spirit potential in us. which means we all have Elijah tendencies.
We all have the Elijah tendency to want to meet God in the fire and the wind and the storm. And then God whispers. But when he whispers, we have to lean in like never before. God actually loves to whisper more than to shout, because the whisper requires a careful attention and listening and faith. When the lightning strikes, you don't need to believe it was God. When there's just a whisper, you have to believe. You know, Art, you mentioned registration is low. You and I don't care about registration on the one hand.
I don't.
There's a financial aspect. There's this, that, and the other. That is not what's driving this.
Not at all.
We don't care at all about that. In fact, I'll take the Gideon's 300 that have signed up. I'll take those 300 and we'll shift the nation. You know, we'll do impossible things with those that cluster together with radical sacrifice and abandonment. The word in Psalm 50, gather to me my consecrated ones who make a covenant with me by sacrifice. God can always, he says, I can move by many or by few. I can save by many or by few. The challenge is there's an invitation to the nation to accelerate transformation and to buy in to the release of blessing. And this isn't a critical word for the pastors in Edmonton at all. What I said before, I realized it afterward, it could sound like a rebuke. It's not a rebuke at all. It's an invitation to lead the parade of history. I'm saying that the pastors at the church in Edmonton, what if they said, we dare to believe our city is a revival city? We dare to go against the grain of secularism and materialism that says the age of miracles is over. You know, when you look at the story and you say Randy Clark that sparked the last great revival, Toronto, and out of seven, think about this, Art. These are the whispers of God. You didn't orchestrate that to be in that meeting and to know those 3 data points. There's 7 billion people in the earth. Why didn't a Ukrainian? Why didn't a South African? Why didn't a South Korean or an Australian or a Frenchman have the word about Edmonton? Why didn't someone from Bolivia? There was an Israeli man, hears that phrase. He doesn't know what it is. He says there's a revival coming, and this Edmonton is key to it. Why did that person from that nation have that word about that name? And then you hear the last great revival leader that sparked it is saying it's coming to Alberta. That man says it's coming to this city in Alberta, and he's from Israel. And in the 5 days that we're meeting, which we didn't try to plan, they are the anniversary of Canada recognizing Israel.
70, another 70.
It's a 70 year, because Canada was 1 year late.
Yes.
Israel came in May 14th, 1948. Canada refused to recognize it, but May 17th, 1949, Canada recognizes Israel. And now we tried to do this May 1 to 5. God said, no. I want it to be over this period of time, right in the middle of which is when Canada took the step of dialing into the Abrahamic covenant. Those who bless you, I will bless. And now a man of that covenant nation in the natural is saying, if you'll just lean into this, you're going to step into history. You're going to move in a powerful way. And I'm just saying, can Alberta believe this? Can Alberta hear the whisper of God? Can Alberta not look for the fire and the thunder, but say, Charles Price tapped into that. That place was packed out with 12,000 people. And a son of Abraham is saying, Edmonton is going to be the place of miracles again. And the last great revival leader says it too. Alberta, it's going to come. And the whole oil storyline, it's not in Saskatchewan. It's not in Montreal. It's not in the territories. It's not in British Columbia. When there's oil in the ground, it's a place of blessing. When there's oil in the ground, it's an invitation where, Paul says, first the natural, then the spiritual. When that oil flows, what if we could come together and begin to command the blessing of wealth across Canada? I just believe Alberta and Edmonton and the churches of that region, that province, could lay hold of this by faith and become a catalyst for transformation, for economies to blossom, that spill over, that become generous in mercy, generous in, imagine with that kind of wealth, how Canada become a nation that brings healing to the rest of the nations. Imagine how Canada could begin to align with its prophetic destiny. I believe the churches of Alberta and the businesses of Alberta will be the most generous in the earth. And all of Canada will prosper. And righteous decrees will begin to come out of the government. There are so many reasons that we had to deal with what we dealt with in North Battleford.
Yeah.
But we couldn't deal with everything.
No.
And God has an arrow in the spirit and a bullseye saying, I'm whispering, I'm telling a story. Will you hear and enter into the story? I'm giving you the ears. It says, Isaiah 61, Isaiah 50, he awakens our ears morning by morning to hear. And it says, and I was not rebellious, and I gave myself to the instruction. These are instructing moments for Canada to say, will you believe? Hundreds of college campuses, people around the world are right now on a 40-day Jesus fast. If even right now, Canada would lay hold of this, intercessors, churches, youth groups, figure out a way, turn off your TV, unsubscribe from Netflix, go on a juice fast, go on a water fast, go on a Daniel fast, join with our Catholic brothers that are doing Lent right now for 40 days. It ends in May 9th. From now through May 9th, 10 days, just about 10 days. Fast for the nation for 10 days. Join me. I'm an American fasting for your nation. Hunger for God. Oh, we got to have the spirit of burning on us. He's casting fire on the earth. Will he find dry wood? Can he burn in me? Can he burn in you? I've got to burn like never before. Canada has a future and a hope. But we have to make decisions. If there are 3 or 4 more battle zones, Art, if there are, we can't look at this as, well, I'll wait for the one that comes to my area. This is a time for the army of the king, the Lord Sebaoth, the Lord of hosts, has an army. He has a standing army in Canada. And I believe you have been sovereignly appointed, the steering committee with you that's giving guidance. The vision that carries this is not just to have some discipleship equipping. We aren't trying to get a good base hit. We're swinging for the fences. We're going for Canada shall be saved. We're doing nothing less than saying we want to shift the nation's history. And if we don't, 2-3 years down the line, it might be too late. And that is a war for the soul of Canada that begins with, we have to say yes to God. If he's putting a fire out, we have to, he can extend the fire and long for us to burn. But we have to come into agreement with that so that we feel the heat. We have a free will choice to agree with his sovereignty. And if Canada will say yes, the whole nation will burn. We'll go from battle to battle until the war is won. And the children and grandchildren of Canada will look back on this move and say, that was when it shifted. And I'm walking in my destiny because they accepted the yoke of what it takes to burn, not just for 10 days, not just for a couple of weeks, but engagement after engagement. 2, 3, 4, 5 key prophetic markers in the spirit to reclaim the full prophetic destiny of this nation, shift elections, re-plumbline the nation to the word of God so that he shall have dominion from sea to sea. It's nothing less than that, and it has to be all of that, or people shouldn't come because that's what it is. If they're coming for a good time, if they're coming to bask in some glory moments, it'll happen, but that's not what they're coming for. We're coming to shake the nation and shift history.
We thank you, intercessors of Canada, that are hearing this, old and young. And like I said, I made a joke. I used to think that prayer was for old white women.
Yeah.
because that's all I saw when I
Yeah.
got saved in the Pentecostal church. But I found out, and God bless the old white women. I mean, they're not offended by that I say that. They're honored because they've been carrying Canada. But
Yes.
now all the young people are coming in. All the men are taking their place.
Yes.
Take your place, millennials, Gen X, Gen
The only reason
Z.
you're doing what you're doing is because of those old white women's prayers.
So true.
We aren't starting something.
No.
We're inheriting something.
And actually, let me say something to the intercessors and to Canada. The bowl is almost full.
Yes.
Fatine and all these different movements and the cry is added to the bowl. All the intercessors for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, all the intercession been filling up a bowl.
Watchmen.
And the watchmen, we just believe that the bowl is just about to tip, but it's going to take a big, serious push. And you know what? I know about that Gideon's 300, but I'm going to tell you something. I felt the Lord say, 1,000 people for Battleford. And at first I didn't have faith for him. Like, this is impossible. Will even 300 show up? 1,000 people plus. So I'm just believing that 3,000 people are supposed to answer the call, and 3,000 in a critical mass.
From across Canada.
Oh, from
1,000 in Edmonton alone. Another 500, 1,000 from Alberta. Another 1,000 from across Canada. This is a national summons.
This is a national emergency, and it is a summons.